Okay. So for those who don't know me or haven't met me with my new hat on, I'm Owen Sedgwick-Gell. I'm the head of membership and programs for Woodcraft Folk. So I'm now working as part of a leadership team with Debs and Richard as part of our new staffing structure. With me is Leanne, who many of you will know and have had many dealings with in the past. So as we get ready to open up to delivering actual real live youth work to actual real life people again, we thought we'd take this opportunity just to run through some of the key points of the new guidance, run through how that affects and impacts on the work that we do, and then give you the chance to share anything that is on your mind, any concerns, worries, thoughts, and signpost you to what's there to help you as we move, hopefully, without hitch, back into steadily reopening up our provision. I have got a few slides just summarising where we're at, which I can share with you and make available afterwards. So don't feel you have to kind of scribble all this down manically. Can everyone hear, by the way? Vague thumbs up, all good? Okay. I will just share this thing. I share this thing anyway. So, start. Okay. Can people see a slide there?
Yeah.
They guess. Excellent. Good. Fine. It's just slightly disconcerting that I can't see what I'm seeing, what you're seeing. Anyway, so just to run you through where we are currently at, the key dates that are coming up. Ooh. So from the 12th of March, so last week, we were allowed to run outdoor provision again within Scotland. Have we got anyone from Scotland with us this evening? No. For us in England, we have to wait until the 29th of March to be able to start to deliver outdoors again. And we don't yet have a date for when we will be able to start outdoor youth work provision in Wales. Beyond the next couple of weeks, we know that there will be a point at which we'll be allowed to reopen to indoor provision. And whilst the government has circulated widely a date that this won't happen before, it won't be confirmed that we're actually moving to that stage of the kind of unlocking plan until probably about a week before. We'll update you again. But the earliest date that can happen is the 12th of April. And then similarly, the earliest date that it will be possible to go away with groups again, stay overnight, is going to be the 17th of May. The advice that we're hearing from the National Youth Agency in particular is that those dates are very likely to slip. And the advice that we're giving is that you don't plan to think about any residentials before the summer, when hopefully much more will be clear and much more will be certain. The other thing to say is that in England, we are expecting that people will return to a single set of regulations across the country. And with the exception of any very localised restrictions that might happen, we won't be going back to that kind of tiered approach again. The expectation in Scotland is that we are very likely to go back to a situation where we have what they call local protection levels. And so we will be seeing different parts of Scotland having different sets of restrictions depending on their geographic location. Again, that's unclear, and there'll be more information about that when the government confirms that's going on. Just to run you through then the main parts of the provision within England. We're responding to the guidance that's been put out by the National Youth Agency. They are the body that effectively supports and to some extent regulates youth activities within England. So this guidance, which is an interpretation of what they've sat down and negotiated with the government, is what we need to follow. In England, we can deliver to groups of a maximum of 15 young people. And that will be the same whether it's indoor or outdoor provision. If you have more than 15 young people who want to access your provision, then you will need to do that by having different bubbles. So physically separated groups of no more than 15 young people that are either meeting in a different place from each other or at a different time. You cannot have more than 15 young people sharing the same space, even if it is an outdoor space. You would need to make sure that there is a physical separation between them. So, one bubble on that side of the field, one bubble on that side of the field. There's much more information in the guidance document about how you can manage that within a venue. If that's a factor for you, you need to think about whether you're going to run sessions back to back or whether you're going to run with separate bubbles and how you're going to manage that. In England, adults are not included in the above total. So the volunteers that are supporting your provision are extra to that 15. You should, however, be mindful that anybody else who's in that space increases the risk of transmission. And you should be therefore thinking about making sure that you're running with the smallest number of volunteers that you can use to provide the activity safely. I know many groups, particularly LPID groups, have tended to have parents are welcome to come and stay, and it's lovely if you all join in the activity. The more that you do that, the more risk at the moment you're opening yourselves up to. So therefore, thinking about what the minimum ratios are that you need to be safe in your space is probably more of a watchword than let's make something that's lovely and inclusive. Everybody needs to be observing social distancing in an outdoor venue or an indoor venue. Ideally, this should be 2 meters. They are saying that if absolutely necessary, you could go to 1 meter plus, but in an outdoor venue, I would hope most people would be able to plan for and enforce 2 meters. If you are meeting indoors, which obviously you won't be until the 12th of April or later, then face coverings will be necessary for everybody who's aged 11 or over, unless there's a medical exemption. Against that background, I'm sure many groups, particularly over the summer, will decide that it is preferable to keep meeting outdoors. And I think I definitely support that where you can deliver in that way. You do need to make sure that you're capturing attendee information in case you subsequently get notified that somebody's come down with COVID and you need to pass that on to test and trace. An attendance register, if you've got the details of your adults and your young people, particularly if it's already registered on group, is a really simple way to do that. But if you're not, if you're running your sessions in another way, you need to think of another way to do that. you need to make sure that people attending your provision are able to follow and understand and follow the self-isolation guidance, so they do not come if they're feeling unwell, if they've got symptoms, if they're waiting on a test. And again, all of that information is available through NHS England, and it's also summarised in the draft risk assessment that we've circulated. If you want any information on all of that, this document that's in top left, top right of the screen, the NYA guidance goes into much more detail, and that, together with the guidance notes that I prepared and sent out a couple of weeks ago, should tell you most of what you need to know about the basics of running COVID safe provision within England. Scotland is subtly different in some ways that just make life a little bit more complicated. Groups and bubbles of 15 people within Scotland, adults count towards that limit. So actually, if you need 5 volunteers to run your session, you can only have 10 young people there. Physical distancing, as they refer to it in Scottish guidance, only applies to people who are aged 12 and above, and between people who are 12 and above and people who are under 12 and above, but not among people who are 12 or 11 and younger, just to make life more complicated. The Scottish government really sensibly recognised the impact of that physical distance on young people and has excluded them from its guidance at the outset. So that continues. Face coverings are mandatory indoors, but in Scotland it's for people aged 12 and over. And again, capturing attendee information for Test and Protect, which is the Scottish government's equivalent, and to follow the NHS Scotland guidance on self-isolation, which is again subtly different. And the kind of guiding document for all of that is this purple thing, which is the guiding framework for Youth Link Scotland, which is the youth umbrella body within Scotland. Everyone's still with me, more or less. Not brilliant. Whichever of those frameworks you are operating under, there are some kind of bits of advice that I would give and that I would hope that everybody would be thinking about generally. It is tempting to say, let's go back to delivering absolutely everything just as we always have done, as quickly as possible. I would urge you to focus on what you can deliver, what is safe, what feels right, what feels prudent, rather than delivering the maximum that you can allow. All the guidance is that we start back slowly. If there are, maybe you might want to think about running sessions for a smaller number of people in the first instance, rather than immediately going back to running things for your full combined multi-age group. If you run an open group, you might want to say, oh, we'll start up with a meetup for pioneers or something, just so that you manage those numbers in the first instance. Coupled with that, think about balancing the risk of opening up again very carefully against the benefits that young people are going to gain from it. Very, very clearly, young people are going to benefit hugely from being able to meet up with their peers again in a safe but offline, slightly less controlled situation than school. However, what is the best thing to do with that provision? Reality, there will be some activities that it's quite hard to deliver in an outdoor setting. Some of the sort of discussion, drama, activities like that we might have done with older young people may seem harder to deliver in an outdoor setting. Maybe we just accept that the risks of trying to make that work in an indoor setting with all the COVID guidance that's going on, all the precautions we need to take, maybe the risk and the imbugrance of doing that outweighs the benefit, and you might just decide to stick with outdoors and wide games and some of those things just for the moment while we're easing back to it. There may be specific issues that I don't know about for your group that mean that you want to take a particular approach, or there is a particular way that you want to meet, or particular things you don't want to do, or particular things that are more risky. That might be the additional needs of your young people. It might be that you've got volunteers or a group of volunteers who are particularly clinically vulnerable. It might be that there's a specific local condition. I mean, I'm up in Manchester. We've had 2 areas neighbouring ours where there's been outbreaks of supposed evil, nasty, horrible variants, and lots and lots of door-to-door testing. If we were meeting outdoors during those times, we might have suspended for a week because there was a particular issue at that time and people were getting particularly jumpy about community transmission. So be responsive. And as always with our voluntary provision, you are volunteers. Nobody's going to hold guns to your head and demand that you reopen your provision. If you're not comfortable to do it, if the costs of doing so are too high in terms of the precautions that you're being asked to take, and it takes you out of your comfort zone, there is no expectation that you have to open it as soon as you can. Do it at a pace that feels right for you and for the volunteers that you work with, at a pace that you feel that you can cope with. The other thing to note, and I've already had some kind of queries on this from members, we are a voluntary youth organisation. We operate across the UK. There are other organisations that are similar, which are saying slightly different things to their members and to their group leaders. The Scouts were very, very quick to get out guidance that suggested that dates were more concrete and more fixed than we were led to believe. Just because other people are doing different things or having a different message, the guidance is very clear that it's the organisation that you're working within that is providing the framework, and anything we determine when we interpret the guidance trumps what anybody else might be doing down the road. So your local scout group or guide group might be doing different things. There will be other youth work organisations who have been doing face-to-face meetings because they are targeted and they are doing specific support work, which is covered by other provisions, which has been allowed to carry on for some time. Similarly, there may be local authority youth work that is carrying on. There might be out of hours school provision or alternative provision connected to homeschoolers, which is permitted because it's covered under different regs. So just be aware of that. If you have any queries about any of that, ask Leanne or myself, because we're the ones who've got the, got the line to the National Youth Agency, which is where our guidance comes from. And when you're thinking about staying safe during all of this, don't lose sight of the basics. I think there is lots on the template risk assessment that we've circulated, which goes into lots and lots of detail about protective equipment and wiping down surfaces. Don't forget that kids might run into each other or fall over. We're going to be doing activities that are probably more outdoor, therefore a little bit more physical. There are lots of risks that associate with those that we were all incredibly good at managing when we were doing this every week, but you've scarcely done it for a year. Ease into it. The kids particularly haven't done it for a year. Don't forget all the other risks that are associated with our provision that you've all been incredibly good at managing since you started this, because we're all thinking COVID first. We need not to lose sight of those. And as I've just said, if you need us, we're here. Membership@woolcraft.org.uk will reach Leanne or myself. You've also got our contact details and our numbers. We much rather you asked, is this all right, or what would you suggest, than you went ahead and did it and decided it wasn't a good idea. But we'd very much like to respond and support you as we go through. Just in terms of the next steps then, I hope you've all found the page on our website where we're posting the updates and support, woolcraft.org/COVID-19. All the latest information as it emerges will be there. Currently, we have some information about the steps you need to go through to open up your provision again. The first of those, make sure that you've actually registered your group. If you haven't, you probably know about it by now, because Leanne will be contacting you on an almost daily basis to remind you. But if we don't know that you're registering for the year ahead, even if you're not in a position to pay your group reg fee for the year, we understand that, but we need to know that you're intending to continue, because we need to make sure that our insurers know, and we need to make sure that we know so that we can support you. So if you haven't registered and told us what's going on and who's accountable for the different roles in your group for this year, you need to do that before you open up. Similarly, I know, because we're all only human, that actually going camping in the summer is one of the times that trigger people to kind of get on and renew their membership and their DBS. Lots of people, we reckon something like a quarter of our adult members haven't renewed this year. I'm confident that that's because we plan to run an international camp and probably people were going to renew then. But if you're relying on people to make up the numbers, relying on people to be your key volunteers, please make sure that they've renewed and that they're paid up for the year, because again, we can't cover people by our insurance that we don't know about. So that would be a really good thing to be doing in the next couple of weeks. There is a reopening checklist. It's a very simple Google form, which is just asking you to confirm that you've done those things so that we know which groups are reopening, which groups are going to hold on a little bit, who's anxious to get back to meeting indoors when they can, and who's going to continue to meet outdoors for the summer. There's a few more questions on there that are optional, which are about your support needs, but it does really help us to get a picture of what's going on, of who needs a little bit more help, who needs a little bit more time, and enable us to target support so that people get it and people are able to successfully reopen. And there's it's Google form, as I've said, and it's linked to from that COVID updates page. There is a version for Scotland and a version for England, because the dates and the details are different. So make sure you complete the right one. You will also need to update and share your risk assessment, not just with us, but also with the volunteers that need to know about it. Risk assessments that sit in folders and never get looked at are no use to anybody. Make sure that everyone knows what's changed and what is different. And as you open, particularly if you do that kind of let's start small and build it back, keep reviewing, keep updating, keep reflecting with your fellow volunteers about what worked, what didn't, what felt safe, what could have been improved, because we can write down all the plans we want in advance, but it's only by reviewing it and reflecting on what was working that we can improve it and make it safer for everyone. And finally, have fun. I'm sure everyone's itching to get back to doing it for real after a year of speaking down Zoom to your young people. Let's remember the fun that we have and make sure that we can get back to it despite all the additional precautions that we're going to have to take for the foreseeable future. Just before I finish and throw it open for questions, I've got a few kind of dates for the future coming up. Whilst we are still not able to meet up in person, we've taken the opportunity to schedule some more sessions like this. In 2 days' time, Lauren and Claire from the outreach team will be doing a session to kind of be much more exciting and interesting than this one, full of ideas for the programme activities that you can do and deliver in a socially distanced manner. If you've got new people engaged or people who have got involved over lockdown who want to find out more about what being part of Craftfolk is about, there's a volunteer induction coming up on the 31st. We're running a safeguarding introduction stroke refresher on the 13th of April. Between the 18th and 25th, we've got some member meetups, which will be much more sort of, semi-social kind of interaction, share ideas, share news. One focused on London, South East, South West and Eastern, and then one on Midlands, North Wales, Scotland, which go to the one that suits you. It's not a 3-line whip, but it's just to kind of guide people towards the right one, as well as a member and supporter update from Debs and Pip. We are running a session which is on the 11th of May, which is targeted particularly at local group and district safeguarding leads, to kind of refresh that coordinating role that they have in terms of the safeguarding of our children and young people. And on the expectation that by the end of May, we will have some more guidance about residentials. We have penciled in a session to look at that and the implications of that for your summer plans. We've notionally called Have a Good Weekend. If we've got something to say, we'll go ahead with that. If the guidance is delayed for whatever reason, then we might have to postpone that one, but put it in your diary. These are all on the calendar on the website, with links to the events, and we'll be sharing them with people via social media and so on as we get closer to those dates. But if any of those are relevant to you or relevant to other volunteers in your district, please do come along and share those dates. I think that's all I've got. So I'll throw it open to anything that you want to ask.